But even if it is just an inconvenience, who says that you can deliberately cause a massive inconvenience for anybody you want to?
And then who says you can kill them for doing that? That's the story you're covering. These climate activists push this man too far. They certainly didn't push the trigger. That was him. He chose to murder. Before I talk about this story, I want to pull up a couple of the tweets if you haven't seen them already. End Wokeness and Ian Miles Chong seem to be really on board now with just straight murdering people, which, yeah, is certainly concerning. There's this one. And Wokeness says, no veins bulging, no red face, no yelling. This is not anger. This is fatigue. Yep. People who just murder others on the street in cold blood are tired, y'all. Oh, they're so tired. Just so tired of all this climate news and climate action and people protesting and blocking their roadways and such. And what else do we got? Oh, Ian Miles Chong. You are the carbon footprint they want to erase. This man made them carbon neutral. So they're just saying it now. Of course, what does Fashy McFashy have to say?
Cable news, you start to realize there are a handful of bankable segments. These are segments that describe some outrageous behavior, which the media presents as shocking.
Oh, you don't get it. So if you don't know the story, that man pulled out a gun and shot a bunch of climate protesters, killing 2 of them just in cold blood on the street. Now, normally, you know, most people would just be like, well, that's horrifying, you know, that was just fucking a murderous rampage. But no, the right are saying and taking positions that, in fact, well, this is just the sign of someone who's just so tired, so wary. I grow so wary of all these climate protests and speaking of the climate and climate change and such.
I'll pretend to be very concerned by it, but in fact, this behavior happens all the time, and the media loves it when it happens because it lets them fill airtime on slow news days especially. There's maybe no more obvious example of this phenomenon than so-called protests by climate activists. Every time purple-haired climate nuts deface a historic work of art or throw paint on the side of a building, it's usually...
Remember Soup? Soup was the big one. How dare they throw soup on a beautiful painting that was protected by a cover that didn't actually get the soup on the paint, but they still... It's the implication. That's what's truly just deplorable.
Really good for a quick 2-minute segment on cable news and a few viral posts on social media. Why are those theater kids so upset with the Mona Lisa? Befuddled panelists will ask themselves. Why are the Oberlin sophomores at the Sunrise movement surrounding that politician who's trying to get to his car? They sure are crazy. This kind of thing happens constantly. At this point, you only kind of roll your eyes when you see it. And you've been seeing a lot of it lately. A few days ago, for example, climate activists, as we talked about on the show, smashed the glass protecting Velázquez's Venus painting in London's National Gallery. And before that, just a few weeks ago, protesters glued themselves to signs in the National Museum of Natural History in Washington.
Now, I know these protests or direct action or sit-ins, or as they like to call it on the right, inconveniences, are truly the most disgusting and horrifying reality that they can possibly contemplate. Young people not standing idly by while the entire planet heats up into a boiling frog scenario. Every single climate scientist for a very long time, by the way, globally has been sounding the alarm on what is taking place and consistently saying that we are not meeting the targets. Even the so-called liberals who believe what we're saying are not doing what is necessary in order to prevent catastrophe. And what we're going to see is going to completely disrupt society as we know it, and that is going to accelerate year in, year in, year in, as there are more natural disasters, as the planet heats up, as more people get forcibly displaced from where they live. That's going to result in a lot of people perhaps wanting to move to somewhere where the situation is better. That's going to be mass migration. That's going to be forced migration. And we all know what that kind of stuff does to right-wingers. We all know what they feel in terms of people trying to flee either persecution or unlivable conditions and how they treat those kinds of people. And what that can lead to in terms of fascism when you suddenly get a strong man who comes in who's saying, hey, by the way, we need to completely tighten the border, build more walls, and stop all these these horrifying rapists from coming into the country. That's what we need. Well, when those numbers continue to increase, when it's no longer a 10,000 person caravan, when it's a 100,000 person caravan, when it's a 1 million person caravan, what's going to happen as all of Americans suddenly become deeply, deeply afraid and deeply, deeply scared?
And there are many, many more examples. But the point is, these climate lunatics act out, deface public property, that sort of thing all the time. And then there's some angry news segments about it, and then everybody moves on. This is the familiar cycle. Radicals who are fixated on climate change.
So he's prefacing this whole story, which is, again, about an old guy who killed 2 people because of the inconvenience that they were proposing, as trying to say, by the way, this is how wild everything is. Look at what they're bringing us to the brink they are.
As the Telegraph reported, the group Just Stop Oil gathered at London's Waterloo Bridge, where they blocked an ambulance carrying a patient with a life or death injury. Life or death injury, that's quotes, by the way. That's what we're being told by officials. Here's what that looked like. That's good. So you see them just kind of sitting there. You see them sitting there. You also see the police sort of casually standing there and taking their time, getting the people off the street. Now, according to the Telegraph, in this episode, quote, an ambulance arrived with blue lights and sirens, but was held up in traffic for 10 minutes. The driver of the ambulance told the Telegraph, I'm responding to a life and death emergency. I'm going to pick up a team from Guy's Hospital to save someone's life at another hospital, but I can't get through. So even though they took this kind of lackadaisical
was he calling me out with the ambulance? I don't know. There's no way of knowing these
approach,
days.
everyone's just sitting around, the cops are taking their time. There's actually some urgency to this situation, or at least there should be. Apparently this ambulance driver...
And again, when you're justifying or trying to justify or ramping up to justifying murder, well, I mean, I guess this is some of the things that he's just starting to get there, starting to be like, they don't understand that these climate protesters are technically endangering people's lives. So, I mean, yes, I guess there are extreme measures that need to be taken.
Was transporting a patient whose lungs had stopped working. He needed urgent medical attention. So as the Telegraph reported, the ambulance driver, quote, pleaded with police officers to let him through on multiple occasions as he became...
I'm actually kind of curious how he's going to start it. He'll probably say something like, obviously, I don't endorse murder, but you can see how far people are
guilty
being
of
taken.
Reckless endangerment at a minimum, and murder if somebody dies as a result of their little blockade. It is a little different morally from, someone who goes outside and starts firing a gun into the air at random targets. Now, maybe they won't hit anyone. Maybe they aren't trying to hit anybody, but they are doing something incredibly reckless with total disregard for the damage it may cause. But that's not how these people are being treated. Instead, with very few exceptions, police officers are allowing climate activists to blockade roads with total impunity. And that's been happening in Panama for the past...
Multiple times, Trump supporters, anti-mask protesters blocked access to hospitals. Oh, here in Canada as well. I saw it a couple times. There was actual, full-on, fucking, what is it, COVID denialists blocking ambulances trying to get into ER, being like, no, COVID is fake. The vaccine gives us magnetism powers. You're trying to turn us into magnetos and all this kind of shit. And you're like, you are just a whole bunch of people blocking an ambulance. That's all you are.
3 weeks. As the Daily Mail reports, quote, roadblocks set up by protesters have caused up to $80 million in daily losses to businesses.
Really interesting way to frame this story, isn't it? Pretty wild. Just, okay, hold on. Before we talk about the dude who shot a couple people, we're not endorsing him, by the way. Violence bad. We're not for people just randomly pulling guns out and shooting a bunch of people. But we do want to talk about the massive inconveniences this is causing. $80 million in daily losses to businesses. So...
According to Panama's Association of Company Executives, with schools closed nationwide for over a week and more than 150,000 medical appointments missed. Now, these protesters are blocking a major thoroughfare, the Pan American Highway, roughly 50 miles west of Panama City. The point of this protest, apparently, is that Panama's government signed a deal with a Canadian company giving them 20 years worth of mining rights. Whatever the motivation.
Sounds like Canada.
This is clearly putting people's lives in danger, the blockades. When more than 100,000 medical appointments are being missed and businesses are suffering $80 million in losses per day.
Thousands of medical appointments are being missed. Did you have something to back that up? Or?
Then you're engaging in a violent protest. There's no other way to frame it. When people miss medical appointments, they tend to get sicker. Some of them might die. On top of that, store owners who lose money.
So by shooting, again, young climate protesters, they're actually saving lives. Did you think about that? Did you make the calculation? I mean, come on. A lot of you are moral relativists, or you want to ground your axioms, and you want to talk about how exactly you're trying to maximize the best possible outcomes for multiple people. I mean, in this case, I mean, if one person is just taking it upon themselves to clean out a couple undesirables, in the long run, they could be technically saving lives. How many lives did he save by shooting a couple climate activists?
Every day are going to be forced to make up that revenue in some other way, which might expose them to personal risk that we can't possibly account for. This is what happens when the rule of law breaks down. That's why the rule of law is so important. You know, the holidays are coming up fast.
What is it going to be? Prep buckets, meat, buy gold. A retired lawyer allegedly shot and killed 2 men who were part of a protest blocking a highway in Panama. While he has not been officially named by the police, the suspect is widely reported as Kenneth Darlington, 77, a retired American lawyer and university professor who lives in Panama. Police on X said that a man has been arrested at the scene. He was charged with aggravated homicide and illegal possession of a firearm. Mr. Darlington, who was born in Panama but has U.S. citizenship, was caught in a traffic jam on Tuesday on Highway 55, caused by protesters campaigning against the recent deal by the Panama government made to restart a copper mine. The protests attracted a group of photographers and TV reporters to the side of the traffic block, where they had lined to the middle with the highway with tires, flags, tree branches, and stones to stop the cars. Despite the camera's horrific video footage showed Mr. Darlington, who was allegedly caught in the traffic, waking up to the protesters and open firing, leaving 2 men dead. According to the Panama TV network TVN, who reported they were able to access the court hearing on the shooting incident for a few minutes, the suspect uttered something along the lines of, "This ends here," before leaving the vehicle and storming up the highway towards the protesters. The widely circulated footage shows Mr. Darlington arguing with a group of men from the protest. He allegedly asked who the leaders of the campaign were, to which the men replied that there were none. I don't want to talk to women. I want to talk to men, he responded. While he was confronting the protesters, he took out a handgun from his pocket and kept it in his hand. Fucking old-timey fucking sexism rolled into everything. Hey, come on, baby. There's got to be a man in charge. Let me see her. The victim could see holding his shoulder in immense pain, staring to the side of the road. Oh, sorry. While he was on TV confronting the protesters, he took out a handgun from his pocket, kept it in his hand as he started to tear away at the blockades on the road. One of the protesters could be heard saying, "Why don't you shoot?" while others shouted, "Are you going to kill someone?" According to an outlet, Mr. Darlington replied, "Do you want to be the first?" After arguing with the group, the suspect then reportedly opened fire, hitting one man in the black t-shirt carrying a flag, who immediately fell to the ground. Again, Mr. Darlington allegedly opened fire, according to video footage captured on the scene, which then hit another man in a black t-shirt. The victim could be seen holding his shoulder in immense pain, staggering to the side of the road where he collapsed, according to reports. The men shot identified as 2 teachers, Abdil Diaz, who died on the scene, Ivan Rodriguez, 62, who was taken to Juan Vega Mendez clinic, but he was pronounced dead on arrival, according to local outlets. TVN reported that Mr. Darlington proceeded to move blocks out of the way with his gun still in his hand and then returned to his car. When he approached his vehicle, another person in the car asked him, "Are you aware of what has happened?" To which he replied, "Yes, I killed one and shot another." He then got back into his car, turned to a woman reported to be his girlfriend, and said, "Let's go." The woman allegedly replied, "We are not leaving," before calling up the national police agents, according to TVN. The police later stopped the car, seized Mr. Darlington's handgun, then handcuffed the suspect and took him into their police vehicle. TVN said the suspect appeared in a 2-hour court hearing the next day. The effects of the protests, which started over 3 weeks ago, had a ripple effect on all of Panama. Construction workers' unions and teachers' unions have banded together to protest restarting the copper mine, which agreed to by the Panama government and a Canadian firm. By the way, if you didn't know, Canada is very well known, especially Canadian mining companies, for just taking place in a lot of areas in which the local population does not want the mining companies to do what they're doing. Their mass excavation that usually don't benefit local workers. They're usually incredibly exploitative of local workers in order to take huge amounts of resources for resale to be able to put in our shiny, fancy electronics and all that kind of stuff.
He approached the blockade, got out of his car, and then he shot 2 of the climate
Hey, One Topic. Everyone go check out One Topic's channel. Go give him a follow.
protesters and killed them.
Not that he needs my support. You just cracked 1 mil. Congratulations, friend.
Here's a clip.
Hold on, I just want to make sure it's not going to show. Okay, he's going to show me.
So we're not going to, there you go. He pulls the gun out. We're not going to show when he actually fires the bullet. Now, there are a bunch of news reports, but he does. Eventually, he ends up shooting 2 of them. Now, there are a bunch of news reports describing Kenneth Darlington's actions as horrific and quote unquote shocking. New York Post, for example, had this headline about the incident: American lawyer 77 busted in Panama after gunning down 2 eco-protesters blocking highway in shocking video. That's not really true. Yes, he did gun down 2 eco-protesters, but there's nothing shocking about it if you've been paying attention. Now, what he did is obviously wrong. It's murder.
There you go. There, we got it. Took a while. It took 9 minutes into a 15-minute video, but we finally got it. Murder bad. Yeah. Yeah, obviously. I mean, I'm not here endorsing it. I'm just trying to provide context as to why he may have also been saving lives. Did you think of all the ambulances that got through because of that?
Plain and simple, cannot be condoned. But shocking? No, in fact, the only thing really surprising about Kenneth Darlington's reaction is that he's the first person to react this way in the face of a completely
He's not downplaying shooting people. Oh, well, he's been trying to contextualize it, you see. He started talking about how all these climate protesters, they've gone mad, and they're doing things like throwing soup on paintings covered in bulletproof glass, so the painting actually was fine. But they're doing things like that, and it's a big inconvenience to lots of people. And did you ever stop to think how many ambulances have not been able to get through when people block, roads or stuff like that, and how many people have died as a result of that? Now, Matt Walsh doesn't know or provide any evidence towards those claims, but says and tries to characterize this whole thing as being like, well, at the end of the day, these people technically are killing people because they're blocking ambulances. So people who are eliminating them from the scenario could potentially be saving lives.
Reasonable, sustained blockade of a road that thousands of people depend on for their livelihoods. We've seen suggestions that people have had enough of this kind of thing, to be sure. A few weeks ago, for example, a tribal cop in Nevada plowed through one of these climate blockades, made some arrests, didn't harm anybody. And for a very long time, left-wing protesters have been doing this kind of thing. They've been harassing, accosting, intentionally inconveniencing, and interfering with normal people trying to go about their day.
Intentionally inconveniencing. Oh, wow. Okay, so I made a post about this, by the way. I think is an effective strategy, by the way, blocking major amounts of traffic roads, especially when lots of the people on there, are going to their jobs or their work or stuff like that. And oftentimes that may turn a lot of people off against what your cause or protest is about, because specifically a lot of people are going to be like, I missed my work, I got fired from my job or stuff like that. That's why I've said, I think for direct action, it makes a lot of sense to do so outside of environments where the people who are being directly affected by it are the very people who are trying to destroy the world, right? So I'd say a much more what I consider better tactic is going to be, say, going out in front of stopping oil rigs and oil trucks from entering their kind of areas. And I got a lot of pushback from that, people being like, you don't understand that. So I'm not saying at all that I'm against direct action as the thing. I'm just saying personally, in front of tactics I see, that's one thing that I can play into. But at the end of the day, people are trying to protest in any way they can, and they're trying to get attention in any way they can. And yes, that is going to include inconveniencing people. And at the end of the day, that is never going to be a justified warrant for death, no matter how many ways you try and twist or pretzel this fucking story and be like, well, at the end of the day, there's ambulances and then they're intentionally trying to get people killed. So, I mean, if someone is to kill them, yeah.
And even if it is just an, you hear that sometimes as a defense of these people that are in the highways. Well, it's just an inconvenience to you. Well, as we covered, oftentimes it's a lot more than an inconvenience. But even if it is just an inconvenience, who says that you can deliberately cause a massive inconvenience for anybody you want to?
And then who says you can kill them for doing that? That's the story you're covering. These climate activists push this man too far. They certainly didn't push the fucking trigger. That was him. He chose to murder.
And if you do that, eventually you might get a reaction.
By the way, this is kind of really on brand. You got to remember, this guy is one of the people who, outside of libs of TikTok, may be one of the biggest and most prominent voices consistently pushing for, hey, there's a hospital, a children's hospital, that apparently is doing gender ideology or something. Here's their address. Here's the emails of all the doctors. Here's the phone numbers publicly available. I'm not doxing anyone. Publicly available of all the phone numbers. Here's this, here's that. And then the next day it's like, well, that children's hospital just got a bomb threat. Well, was it me? Was it me or was it Andy No? Was it Andy No or was it Libs of TikTok? Hi, right check, Christopher Rufo. You'll never know. No one can directly tie it to any of us, you see. And so here's another children's hospital, and here's another one, and here's a school, and here's a teacher, and here's a fucking... And they just keep doing this shit with the stochastic terrorism ramps up on a repeated basis to the degree to which, like, Libs of TikTok can actually get full stories where USA Today is like, yeah, there's a direct correlation between the amount of places that you point to and the amount of bomb threats they're getting. And then, you know, they all just laugh about it. It's like, tee-hee, I'm gonna make my background and my logo into a bomb now because it's funny, because children's hospitals getting bomb threats and patients not receiving critical care is hilarious.
That you don't want. You can't just expect it. You can't just expect that everybody, you could just walk out there and inconvenience everybody just for the sake of it.
You know what's a lot more inconvenient than climate change protesters who may block a road? Climate change. Yeah. And the effects of climate change. And you don't need to be like, well, what do you mean in the future? No, now people are dying. Like hundreds of people died in Canada in a summer where there was a heat dome, and then there was just absolutely no way of escaping it for a lot of elders, and they just died. Or the California wildfires, or the wildfires in Australia, for example, or the number of extreme events that are taking place, weather events, in which they're like, well, we normally see 1 or 2 of these every 5 to 10 years, and now we're seeing like 6 in a single year. Yeah, that's going to be very inconvenient as a lot of people die, you know, in the thousands from some of these events.
Now, to be clear, nothing I'm saying is intended to endorse Darlington's actions. The point here is not to encourage anyone else to respond the way he did. I wish this hadn't happened. I wish those people were never in the road to begin with. I wish that when Darlington pulled that gun, they responded like sane people and realized they'd pushed this man too far and simply got...
I really wish they hadn't provoked him. I'm not here to endorse murder. Obviously, I can't do that via rules, regulations, and some maybe local state laws and stuff. So I'm not here to say, you know, go murder your political opponents and detractors. I'm not saying that. But I am saying I wish he hadn't been pushed. I wish he hadn't been inconvenienced like that, you know, inconvenienced to such a degree that who knows what any of us is capable of.
Out of the road, where they had no right to be in the first place. That's what makes, if there's anything shocking in the video, actually, it's that he pulls that gun out and points it at them, and they still stand there.
He's arguing against freedom of speech and assembly to protest on brand. Yep.
Even with the gun out, they don't get out of the road.
Yeah, well, I guess maybe most people are not expecting to get shot again for protesting. That's not usually something going through their heads. And they probably thought that, yeah, he pulled a gun out, and that's scary. But is he going to murder us? Is he in cold blood in front of everybody on camera? Is he going to do that?
So I wish it had played out differently, but it didn't. Instead, what I'm saying is that it was always inevitable that something like this would happen eventually. The ruling class could only suspend law enforcement for so long and so arbitrarily.
The ruling class. The ruling class. You just told a story about how a police officer drove through one of these protests. That was like 2 minutes ago, buddy.
Till a Kenneth Darlington appears and takes matters into his own hands. And now that this precise scenario has happened, I'm betting it won't be the last time. People are increasingly fed up and exhausted. Even the response to this incident on social media shows that. These leftist protesters are intentionally pushing people to the brink.
So, yeah, it's gone from, you know, horrifying to a stated goal and action here. Basically, this is going to keep happening. And if you're watching this and you're tired, I can understand. You have my sympathies, obviously. I'm not here to endorse murdering people on the streets or anything like that, but I'm just saying it's going to keep happening. And you can see online how people are really, really pushing us all to do this, pushing us all collectively to take action.
And regardless of your politics, you can hopefully agree that's not a smart thing to do. It's an especially dumb thing to do on a highway. Road rage incidents.
I think we can all agree that it's not a smart thing to pull out a gun and kill 2 people. Not a smart thing to do. That's something that I used to think we were all on the same page, you know, like back in the day, Hitler bad. That used to be the thing. Everyone agreed. Yeah, Hitler bad. And now we live in a time where it's like, well, There's some things, you know, Autobahn, there's this, like, I mean, it's a misunderstood, complicated figure, for sure. No, Hitler bad, motherfuckers. Killing people, shooting them on the streets for protesting, bad, horrifying even.
Pretty common all over the world. People get stressed out in traffic, unreasonably so. Often they lash out and do drastic things. This is why it's a really bad idea to, you know, flip somebody off in traffic because you're mad that they cut you off or whatever. You don't know who's in that car.
But is it a bad idea to shoot them?
You don't know what kind of day they're having. You don't know what kind of life they're having. You don't know how on edge, how fed up, how completely and totally done with your bull they might possibly be. Now, that's not to say that you deserve to have them pull up beside.
Okay, I got a couple solutions. They're going to be a little radical, but hear me out, okay? Trains. The trains, the SkyTrain, for example, in Vancouver. It runs on time. You get on the train, takes you to your next destination, and there you have it. Way less carbon impact, way less carbon footprint. In fact, if cities were probably, you know, really well equipped with a lot of trains, and then you can even do some high-speed rails to be able to get to far destinations, a lot faster, by the way, way faster. You'll get to your destination quicker, and you don't have to wait for these AI machines that drive us everywhere, because that sounds lovely, right? You're like, oh, what, a 3-hour car ride? No, more like 3 hours Baldur's Gate. You know, well, you could do that on the trains. You can bring your Switch, you can play your video games on the train while you get taken to your next destination. Fast, quick, efficient, better for the environment, and everyone gets everywhere quicker. It's just like win, 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 win. There's nothing but good things to say. Also, if a lot of the parts of your city didn't have roads for the cars, think of all the housing you could build, because a lot of your city is taken up by roads. I don't know if you've ever seen it from like the bird's eye view when you look at the city and you see the crisscrossing of everything. A lot of that is roads for cars to get through, to transport people, of course. And I understand we all loves our cars. We love the vroom vroom, you know, or the hum if you got an electric car, that stuff. But you could actually really improve society a lot if we started going with trains.
You an open fire. You don't deserve to be killed.
No, I don't. I did not confirm that Baldur's Gate 3 is coming to Switch. I don't want to be responsible for this. I know nothing of Baldur's Gate 3 coming on Switch. We do not know, and I don't know if it is graphically capable of handling that. It struggled with Doom, okay? I don't know the Switch is going to be doing Baldur's Gate 3. Fine, you caught me. I'll take the L on that one.
Killed for waving your middle finger around. But if that's the response you get, it can't be denied that you could have easily avoided it by making better choices in the moment. And now imagine blocking an entire road full of traffic and effectively giving the middle finger to hundreds of stressed out commuters all at once who are just trying to get home from work or get to wherever else they're going.
I don't know if it's been a long time since he's, you know, commuted to work or anything like that, but like I used to have to commute a very long time, both to get to school and to later get to work. And yeah, it fucking sucks. And I've also been stuck in traffic where it just doesn't move. And that was in part due to construction. And one of them was under a tunnel and stuff. And it's the worst. It is. It's just absolutely infuriating. You know, you really wish you had something to pass the time while you're just sitting there doing virtually nothing. But I've never once been like, I'm so inconvenienced, I gotta kill who's ever responsible. That thought's never crossed my mind. I've never even thought of harming the person who may be responsible. I'm always just like, probably an accident or something. I don't know what it is. This sucks. Fuck, I just lost my day. I am gonna complain about it. I am gonna be like, fuck, boulder dash, fiddlesticks. Definitely not a call to violence.
You are asking for trouble. There's an image of Kenneth Darlington making the rounds on social media. It became an instantly famous picture, which you can see here. And you can see that Darlington, you know, he's standing there pointing the gun. And they got the shot, I guess, right after he fired it somehow. It's a fascinating picture in many ways. A picture is worth 1,000 words, as they say. And the most interesting thing about it is Darlington's expression. He's not screaming.
He's going with the end wokeness one. He's doing the whole, like, this is not a man driven by rage or insanity. It is a tired old man. Look how tired he is. I'm so weary. I'm so fatigued of having to wait in my nice car, air-conditioned before, to get to another destination because someone has done this to me.
He doesn't look enraged. He doesn't have the expression of...
Just waiting for him to say, welcome to Jurassic Park.
a man who has gone totally insane. Instead, he just looks exhausted. He looks tired. Looks like a man simply fed up.
That's fucked. Because he just killed 2 people. You know? Don't often look at the photo of someone who just has freshly committed a double fucking homicide and then stand there being like, If I was to analyze this photo, I don't really see someone, you know, driven by rage as the left is trying to fool you into believing it seems like a tired old man. And I'm sure you all know what a tired old man is, and should we not respect our seniors and how tired they're becoming?
There are a lot of people like that in the world today. People who just want to live their lives, and yet they find every step of the way forces intentionally trying to make their
Matt Walsh is such an accelerationist, like honestly, and like one of those cowardly accelerationists who does that kind of shit. You know, you can see them on all walks of the political aisle when you see people being like, "Yeah, it's about time someone like grabs a gun and shoots a politician in the face." I type comfortably from my house in San Francisco, you know, shit like that. And Matt Walsh, same thing. It's like, yeah, I'm going to be an accelerationist in this. Everyone's getting tired, and you never know what people are going to do when they're pushed to the brim, and they're doing this to all of us. They really are. The left is forcing our hand in a lot of ways. And that's but at the end of the day, once the cameras are off, he's not out on the streets with a gun looking for climate protesters to melt down. He's not the one calling in the bomb threats personally to the children's hospitals, or calling in the death threats to all the teachers and nurses and doctors. He's not the one who has to do that. He's got a massive ass audience, and he knows a small percentage of them might. And hey, you know, that's just nothing to do with me. I never told anybody to go shoot people on the street. I'm just saying we should sympathize with the guy who just shot 2 people on the street. We should empathize with him and how tired he looks, because we're all so tired, aren't we? All of us, collectively.
lives worse and more difficult. People who have watched the total breakdown of law and order and who have been pushed to the brink and over it because of all this. Again, it's not an endorsement of Darlington's actions. It's just an observation about the state of the world.
You don't even need a lawyer to help you out with why that part was muttered.
And it's a state that, maybe this is most important to understand, it's a state that has been engineered by the people in charge. Whether in Panama or the UK or this country, the authorities take this lackadaisical, overly tolerant approach to left-wing protesters engaged in these kinds of disruptions, or doing things even worse than blocking traffic, or groups of
lackadaisical.
Lacking enthusiasm and determination, carelessness, lazy. I think it was the first time I've ever learned a new word from Matt Walsh. Lackadaisical.
Lackadaisical.
Lackadaisical. Feel like an MC could really pour some butter into that word. It has good mouthfeel.
Lackadaisical.
Lackadaisical.
people looting and, committing crime in the street and that sort of thing. This is happening all over the place, while the people in
Total breakdown of law and order. Oh, okay, well, if you're not familiar with this kind of current line that's been told for a while, this is basically like Tim Pool's bread and butter. The right like to point towards a lot of these stores, say like Target, for example, because if you didn't know, Target had to close down a bunch of their stores in specific areas. And Target, publicly has stated that this has happened to be because of a shoplifting wave that is targeting their stores. And obviously there's nothing they can do but close these stores down because of the increase in shoplifting. And that's just the big reason why that's happened. And then once there was an independent analysis of the stores that were closing down, it was shown that it was being done in predominantly more impoverished neighborhoods, and it wasn't due to an increase in shoplifting. In fact, there was more shoplifting that was happening in adjacent stores right beside them, higher numbers, but those ones not closing down. So maybe it has something else to do with that. But see, this is what people like Tim Pool and Matt Walsh talk about when they talk about the downfall of society, because they keep pointing out, well, you're seeing the wave of crime increase. You're seeing more and more vermin on the streets, stuff like that. And it's like there is an increase in homelessness, but it's not being caused by a woke mind virus. And there may be people shoplifting what seem to be sometimes food and supplies and diaper. Like you see that, like that haul when the NYPD are like, we caught this criminal. Look at this. Yet another black man stealing diapers, baby formula. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's probably something else going on here. Something I think in large part, yeah, that there is certainly a problem with the increase in homelessness and poverty, but it's not a woke mind virus doing that. I think we could look a little bit more to our economic systems.
charge just sort of stand by and watch. Now, if they wanted to protect human life and preserve order and prevent outcomes like this, you'd think they'd crack down on all this stuff. People
The person who took life was the person who shot the gun, the one that you're kind of now just kind of defending. That dude, that's the one who did it. That's pretty easy, right? Like those two people would be alive if he did not do that.
blocking highways, vandalizing artwork, vandalizing statues, looting.
Oh, he's still so sore about the Confederate statue melting and his haunted face will haunt him for... No! No, man! The white race will rule forever! He's still so upset about that.
Etc. You think they'd make sure the Pan American Highway wasn't shut down for the better part of a month?
By the way, taking down and melting Robert E. Lee statues is based and awesome, actually, and should continue to be done.
But the authorities are not doing any of that, which can only lead you to the conclusion that they don't want to preserve order at all.
Which is also a wild claim, because when you look at what the state power is being used for, did you look at the protests today for Stop Cop City? Yeah? That's a lot of police. That's a lot of riot gear, and that's a lot of militarized fucking personnel on the streets going after Antifa. I mean, that should be something that you celebrate. Aren't you so happy? Antifa is fucking getting taken down by the cops. Look at that. All of that state power and funding going into something where people are protesting, more money and power going into state funding to be able to militarize and weaponize the police. So I'm pretty sure that system is doing great. They're doing fine. The whole defund the police thing never ended up actually happening. I mean, you could look to a few isolated examples where some of the budget was taken away, but overall, no. In fact, if anything, federally, the money just went up. It's just like, keep on just fucking pumping money into a system that is producing worse and worse results. But yeah, cool stuff.
Do you enjoy the Serfs but prefer not to have to use your eyeballs? Many are saying this. Well, we've got the solution for you. It's the Serf Times in podcast form, available on most major podcasting networks now. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving a good review and feedback, because it really helps the show out, apparently, and it's free, just like the podcast.
Thank you so much for watching, everybody. This show is produced by amazing people like you, and if you want to help us out, please consider donating over at patreon.com/theserfs. The show is made possible thanks to Amazing Fletch, Anna Loves Riley, Ariane McCarthy, Cheryl Alvarez, Doug Cady, Everything Important, Hagbard Celine, Lamidia Panza, Matthew Scarborough, Multimondi, Omni, Peanut Butter Blondie, Political Pappy, Quiet 185, Rachel K, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Ruby K, Sir Nickus, Spinach Monster, Stellar Vision, Sebastian Demo, Tech Tink, Trevbot EXE, Words Greenwood, and not to mention all of the amazing and fabulous people you now see before you.